AdLib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. AdLib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The AdLib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using AdLib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com.
Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm joined by Eric Franchi, and OpenAds' Steven Liss, who is just deserted by his co-founder in real time.
Michael Bishop is just across the table, hard at work.
OpenAds. Where have I heard that name before? Seems familiar.
No, it really resonates with people, this idea of openness.
That's a very mischievous question.
No, it was funny. It was not on my Q4 roadmap to become an expert in trademark law. And it was very surprising to wake up to a bunch of tweets asking, hey, did we just join the trade desk? But it really raised the question of, what does it mean to be open in advertising? And we picked this name out in January 2023. We saw that the way that AI in advertising was going was that eventually brands were going to need to get their context into the media buying process, into the creative generation process. The buy side was going to need signals in their AI from the publisher side. And that meant a lot of interoperability. And I think the reality of the market is starting to arrive there, where you see AdCP, you see the new protocol from IB Tech Lab around agentic advertising. All that is arriving right now. It's that interoperability and also this radical idea of letting advertisers know exactly what they're buying.
You know what Aperia means?
It means open, right? In Latin?
Yes, sir. It does.
You're talking to exactly the kind of person who would know what Aperia means, which is 1% of the people in adtech. But yeah, Michael and Steven, they know that kind of stuff.
I get people all the time with that one.
These are certified nerds. Yeah. Also, just for the sake of everyone listening, if you live under a rock, OpenAds is a startup that does generative creative, among other things, which we're going to get into, an AI native ad platform. I'm an advisor at OpenAds. They've been around for a few years. And very recently, an ad tech company you may have heard of called The Trade Desk released a product called OpenAds. And so that is the little skirmish to which we were referring. And do not sue me because I didn't say anything subjective. I just laid out some facts, and that is all. But to Steven's point, yeah, I think the openness question is interesting because what's happening is that we're living through the most exciting moment in ad tech basically since the birth of programmatic, right? There's a generational moment with the widespread adoption of AI, the emergence of agentic advertising, yada, yada. And so it's creating a new moment for everyone in the industry to get together and say, let's question some of our fundamental assumptions about how this whole thing should work. So there's a question there about openness. And one of the things I like the best about the way you and Michael describe OpenAds, Steven, is the contrast you draw between the open internet and programmatic advertising and how advertising works on the walled gardens. Do you want to talk a little bit about that contrast in terms of efficacy and therefore why you are bullish on the ability of AI to contribute to the performance of programmatic advertising?
Yeah. You look at the best ad product in existence right now, I would say, is Meta, where the performance on an impression basis is about 1 in 100 ads get clicked. Now, it's a nice ad format. It's relevant. Users seem not to mind it too much. So it's working for advertisers, and it's pretty good for users. You look at programmatic open web display. It's about 1/20th the performance on a click-through rate basis. And you look at that performance gap between Meta and the open web, and you think, what can AI do to close this gap? What does Meta have that we don't? And I'd say most prominently is identity. They know exactly who you are. They're not worried about serving weird low viewability ads at the bottom of a page, fast refreshing. But then you think about, what does programmatic display have that Meta doesn't? And there are some advantages here. And I'd say the biggest one is context. Now, when someone is reading an article or interacting with content on a web page, this is a much longer engagement than now the 1 to 2 seconds that they would spend reading one post in an endless scroll. And that's something where AI unlocks a lot of potential here around relevancy, around generative creative. And I think the opportunity here for unlocking performance on the open web, it's very analogous to shale oil in America. Bear with me for like 30 seconds here. So like we've known for like hundreds of years that there's been all this oil underneath the US, but it's locked up in this porous rock and you can't really just drill into a pool of it and suck it out. And it wasn't until the 2010s where we finally figured out this new technology, hydraulic fracking. And all of a sudden, with this new tech, you could unlock this latent pool of value that was under our feet. We all knew about it. And we went from an oil importer to an oil exporter. And that's really what AI does for the open web. It allows us to unlock this latent potential here. These are the same humans that are scrolling through Meta. It's the same audience, the same value there. It's just really hard to unlock, to deal with all of the intricacies and arcana of programmatic and deliver a quality, relevant ad experience.
So context versus identity, I think that's an interesting way of framing what the difference and the opportunity is, right? Like, can you make context as valuable as identity? That's the open question. The other side of it, and this is where, you guys are playing with your core business is on formats. Meta has one format and it works really well. The open web, whatever we want to call this thing, I mean, there's no standardization across publishers. Like you have a bunch of different formats depending on like what device, what browser, like the length of the session, everything like that. Do you see a place where, I mean, you guys are focused on solving what goes into the format. Do you see a place where the format issue gets solved and standardized? So we have like the open web version at its most, kind of like best and highest state, the open web version of like the Facebook placement where everybody can align, make money, see performance, win.
Yeah. So this is really more of an incentives problem than a technology problem because we've had high impact ad formats now since the Undertone days. And the problem here is that you need to get advertisers to pay for quality attention. And so until you have them transacting on, we have these supply signals. And I think, products like Sincera, are getting towards that. Gamera is getting even deeper into that. When you get advertisers on the demand side actually caring about which rectangles they're buying on the internet, not just on a domain quality level, but on a URL level, on an ad slot level, on a device level. It's a lot of work. But if you want the open web to actually perform on par with or closer to Meta competitive ad cost, then you have to actually get advertisers to care about the ad experience. And when they start caring about and paying for that quality, I think you're going to see the incentives shift the ad formats themselves to improve. Now, certainly in our case, OpenAds, we're operating as really the first AI native DSP. And that means building up a DSP from the ground up from first principles, which would be a lot of work if not for the latest breakthroughs in AI coding. But what that allows us to do is bid on format quality. So not just some random, 300 by 250 at the bottom of the screen. We're able to identify, here are some underpriced, nice placements, high viewability, high attention. So the right places to put these high quality ads, these relevant ads.
Eric, did you hear? There were a couple of things Steven did that I need to highlight. One is just like slipping an undertone like that, like chef's kiss, masterful, beautiful. The other thing is you heard it here first. Wokesters, OpenAds is the fracking of ad tech. I just want that's what Steven said.
We're gonna drill the open web.
Yeah, 100%. Drill, baby, drill. American dynamism. That is what OpenAds stands for. So now you know.
That's funny. It's interesting what you brought up, Steven, and I realize we're kind of riffing. We'll get to maybe some of the questions we had in a second. You're mentioning a cohort of companies that's not the same DSPs and like measurement companies that everybody talks about and has talked about for some time, right? You're talking about a new DSP named OpenAds. You're talking about new measurement providers named Gamera, and to a degree Sincera, right? I think it's next generation. It's so cool to me as like an early stage investor and enthusiast to see this ecosystem now kind of coming together, working with each other, trying to push this thing forward. And obviously the launch of AdCP, I would count, that as well. It's like, it's pretty awesome to see.
No, AI has Hayes Valley in San Francisco, where you have all these very early stage companies really breaking new ground and being able to cooperate in that way together. And you have something very similar here, in New York City with adtech, where as startups, we have the luxury of caring a lot more and the necessity of caring a lot more about performance for advertisers. And that means we don't have the same existing business incentives to just stick with DV or stick with IS. And we have the opportunity to use AI to do not just brand safety. More shout outs to Mobian, where we're using a deeper AI semantic understanding of brand suitability to sort of unlock and reclaim ad supply and news. But it really allows you to rebuild from first principles again and start unlocking more of this value that's been trapped in the open web.
So, Steven, you guys are out here pitching this to CMOs, brand people, agency people. What aspects of the pitch are resonating with different audiences?
Yeah. So for SMBs, for performance marketers, people who literally don't even know what a DSP is, much less a deal ID or any of this programmatic arcana. When you talk to them about, here's Meta, costs $20 CPMs, it works, but it's expensive. Here's the open web. CPMs are a fraction of that. If we can close this gap, we're offering you something that performs better than your existing open web. It's more affordable than Meta. That is a very, very big deal to them, and they all want to try that out. For the big brands, for the holdcos, it's almost the opposite, where with the SMBs, you lead with performance and then show them that the creative is good enough. With big brands, you lead with creative. It's much more of an emotional selling experience where you need to show them something that they're not able to do with anyone else. And that's where we get into this moment that we're seeing in AI around artificial creativity, as distinct from artificial intelligence. And that's where when I meet with a CMO, I will show them the visuals of ads that our platform generated. And the reactions have often been, wait, is that one of our ads? There's this moment where you can tell that, yes, we're getting a second meeting where they feel a bit shaken because this is a level of originality and creativity that up until this moment they thought was uniquely human. And as someone, these CMOs have spent decades in creative roles, this is both exciting and a little bit threatening to them. So I think it's really important to talk about where we are in terms of artificial creativity, what the capabilities are, what are the limits, and what is the role of the human here?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful for the audience to share these kinds of insights because obviously we're talking about all these exciting AI inventions. And in ad tech, in the tech community, we get excited about the full gamut of options. But the biggest question isn't like whether these innovations will occur, it's whether they'll get adopted and how and by whom, right? And so I think it's interesting to hear from someone who's on the ground in terms of like what elements of the pitch are resonating with each audience. And I think you and I were talking about a meeting you had with a Fortune 200 brand CMO who was like, saw your demo and you showed them what their ad would look like through OpenAds, like tailored to a specific page on the open internet. And they were like, wow, that's the first sort of exciting showcase of creativity I've seen from an AI native advertising solution.
Yeah. Now, in terms of like what artificial creativity means right now is it's very much like the infinite monkeys with typewriters, and eventually one of them will get lucky and type out Shakespeare. That's kind of what AI creativity is like right now, where it will swap out a bunch of creative concepts, and it's actually quite good at knowing when something is off-brand or brand unsafe. So it discards that. And occasionally, just randomly, you're going to get some really, really good creative. And that's actually one of the other strengths of the open web is, when you take this seed of a creative idea and you run it across different web pages, across all the chaos and variety of the open web, in that chaos, you're going to take this, the same campaign goals and see them instantiated in 1,000 different ways. And some of those you're going to see through performance data, through clicks, through attention, that, hey, we might actually have a killer creative here. But the AI by itself, it's actually pretty bad at knowing when it has Shakespeare versus Amazon romance. And so that's where you need that human feedback, whether it's, someone inside the brand flipping through 1,000 generated creatives and giving them a thumbs up or thumbs down, or setting them loose on the web and seeing what performs.
Walk us through where we are today versus maybe where we were 12 months ago and where we might be in another 12 months with respect to all this stuff you're talking about. We can just look at it. AI is so broad. We can continue going down this path of artificial creative. Like, what was the state of the state a year ago versus today? It seems like it's like the early adoption, experimentation phase versus where do you see it a year from now?
Even 6 months ago, it was radically different. And I think this is very important for anyone who's building a company or even just managing product in ad tech, is to understand, does the next AI release make my product possible? Does the next AI release make it obsolete? Really, the heuristic I use is, if we got AGI, would this make my product better or would it replace it? And I think 6 months ago, the state of things was, up until April, I thought the capability to do image ads in display was going to be too far off. The models were too expensive, and they all had 6 fingers or the same sort of ChatGPT sheen. It could do Studio Ghibli style, but it was not anywhere close to what a big brand would need. And really what changed in the last 6 months are 2 model releases. Sonnet 4.5 from Anthropic. So that's, I'd say, the best all-purpose coding model right now. And that's what allows a small team like OpenAds to actually build our own DSP from the ground up. Each of us is managing a fleet of these agents. Brian O'Kelly has been using Claude extensively to supercharge the speed of launching AdCP. And that's been an accelerator on that front. And then on the creative model side, Google's Gemini Nano Banana model is not so much an image generator, but an image editor. And what that allows you to do is take real product images from a brand and insert them into whatever situation you want them to be, change the background, change the size, change the person holding the Coke can to a man, a woman, a giraffe, whatever you want. And I think what we're going to see in the next, probably by the time this pod comes out, Gemini 3 might be out, or Nano Banana 2 is going to be out. And that is going to very likely resolve a lot of the remaining problems around creative image generation. So as a product developer, you can put in engineering now and try and get it from 90% to 100, or you might be better off just building the business and waiting for DeepMind to do your job.
So continue. Or do you not look past the next 6 months?
Yeah. So the plan for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months is either the models are going to keep getting better. That's what the latest investors in OpenAI, that's the bet that they're making, whatever it was like 300 billion, is that the models will keep getting better. Or the thing that I know to be true is that models will get faster. Like, that is guaranteed. This is, I think Google has a new line of TPUs coming out. That's their specialized AI inference chip that runs their models quite a bit faster. They have a partnership with Anthropic, so you might be getting the Anthropic models at higher speed. And what we found is that just when you run more tokens, more compute, the ad performance gets better. So you have a lot of companies launching and getting to revenue very quickly, especially in the pure creative layer. I think Icon is one of those. A lot of the video creative startups, Streamer actually got the timing very good, where there was a window between AI makes this product possible and then potentially the window closing, not even 2 years later, where maybe VO 3.1 or VO 4 or OpenAI's video model Sora just replaces that. And so you have to make sure that your business is not just going to get replaced by the next model release. And that's where building a DSP for us, really getting into the combination of not just the creative, but combining creative with the media buying, putting the right creative in the right slots. That's where we see, the better these models get, the better the creative gets, the better our bidding strategy gets, the better our measurement gets. Like, I'm not afraid of the next model. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to date, this has been a truth, right? The most successful companies in kind of ad tech creative haven't been creative companies. They've figured out a way to connect creative, to your point, whether it's to the transaction, to measurement, to data. So if we believe that the future will be like the past, I would agree with you. One more question before you hop in again, Joe. So what categories do you think could just, be at risk? You mentioned creative generation potentially is at risk. Are there other categories that you see specific to ad tech that you'd be like, I don't know if I'd go down this path?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to create a successful small ad tech exit. There's also a lot of ways just to get, absolutely crushed down the line. So making sure that you're, whatever direction you're moving in, like hopefully Amazon doesn't come steamrolling through there, and do exactly what you're doing. So I would worry about businesses that would more naturally end up as a product inside of a larger platform. So I think media planning on its own, maybe at like the meta DSP level, there's going to be some value there because no one platform is going to own that. So neutrality is actually a moat. I take a lot of inspiration from my co-founder's experience at Moat, where their biggest defense wasn't technological or business-wise, it was neutrality. So there's a lot of value in, the one thing that Amazon is never going to steal from you is that, you are not Amazon. So that puts you in a position of trust with brands, of neutrality. It allows you to interoperate. So yeah, I would worry about pure media planning because that's the kind of product that could just get rolled out as a release inside a DSP. Creative, I think, Google came out with the Pomeli static ad generator this week. Canva came out with their own very similar product a few days later. So yeah, pure creative, as we said, is risky.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think basically what you're saying, Steven, like high level is you want to be able to put a number of these things together, right? If you're like creative might be particularly vulnerable, which I think Ari always says that as well, that he's bearish on like pure play creative automation startups. But in general, if you do one thing, planning, creative, whatever, you're more vulnerable to disruption. Whereas if you're able to put it all together, that's super valuable because even just making like integration seamless is its own business, right? So if you're able to like cover a few different areas of capabilities, and then put it all together, that is what's the most valuable. That made me think of the messaging Viant has been rolling out around the autonomous advertising platform. And that also made me want to follow up on something you said about the human in the loop, because this is a very common paradigm among AI startups or existing companies innovating around AI is like, yeah, don't worry about it because like there's going to be AI and it's going to be autonomous to a degree, but then you're going to have a human in the loop. And what in my conversations with the Viant guys, they've started to diverge from this a little bit in that they're like, yeah, there's going to be a human in the loop for a while, and then eventually it will be, as they're saying, autonomous. What's your perception of that?
Yeah. So when I talk to a large brand with a lot of brand equity, it's very easy to show them and sell them on, here's the ceiling of the capabilities. And then they want to know, especially if they're in a regulated industry like finance or health, it's not going to make something up. Are the images going to be safe? And so the approach we've been taking there is, actually generative DCO. So like using AI to basically select the right image asset. So something that is pre-approved, checked off by the brand, and generate the text on that. And we found that brands have a lot more trust in generative text because, you can run a panel of agents before any creative goes live. And so if you're AI CMO asking, would my real counterpart be okay with this ad? Would it be okay with this ad placement? You have your AI compliance officer thinking, okay, here are all of the rules for this industry. Does this creative follow all of these rules? You have your neurotic AI copywriter asking, would I be proud to have this, creative shown? And when you run enough compute, enough safety checks on that, text feels very safe. For images, this is where we actually built this Tinder-like experience where we're generating these image ads for 1,000 different URLs, and someone inside the agency, probably in their 20s, has this AI copilot role where, the AI is flying and they are the copilot now, where they go through all these creatives and swipe. This was good. This was good. This one, try again.
This one doesn't meet my height limits. I love these analogies we're spinning up for OpenAds. OpenAds is the Tinder fracking platform of AI ad tech.
Someone's got to be.
And that's beautiful. I'm so glad you're giving that to the world. So we got deep into a lot of the AI stuff. I also wanted to touch on some like early stage founder startup type stuff with you. So we talked about the different audiences you're pitching, what's resonating with them. As an early stage startup that's doing founder led sales, How are you getting deals over the line? Like what's working from a go-to-market perspective? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, the answer to everything is often some amount of AI. So when I go to talk to, a massive retailer, before every single meeting, I am having ChatGPT go out and read all of their public filings. I want to know exactly what is top of mind for them. And I've picked up so many things. Like I've learned that this retailer has just announced their commerce chatbot. I've learned that this CMO has a directive to transfer half of their ad spend to influencers next year. What I am doing is contextual selling the same way that our technology does contextual creative. And so each pitch is really tailored to whatever is challenging for that company in that industry. So if it's a large brand, they're looking for reach, they're looking for reliable creative that meets the moment and gets above all of the noise in the ecosystem. For SMBs, it's about performance and knowing about what's challenging in their industry. Also very heavy on demos. There's no substitute for showing people ads that make them feel cool and then showing them all the places that those would run.
How are you finding the fundraiser environment? Are Eric and his peers driving you insane? What dumb questions are they asking?
Oh my God. Like we had a tier 1 VC tell us that they thought advertising was the business model of the past. That's an East Coast, West Coast divide here, although it is changing. When we first started out in 2023, saying the word ad network, that was a very bad word to say to VCs because ad tech has been going through a consolidation and M&A era for a long time. And now there has been a vibe shift. We're seeing all kinds of very AI heavy ad tech adjacent companies start to get funded. A lot in the creative space, which, East Coast ad tech knows better, but you see a lot of West Coast money flowing into those. We've actually seen probably a dozen first AI ad network launches get funded in the last year or so. And it's been interesting because that's what we set out to do 2 years ago, to put ads inside AI search and chatbots. And I think everyone wants to believe that AI search is the new mobile where there's going to be this long tail of apps. But what's actually happened is OpenAI has consolidated most of that market. And the medium and long tail is, we're on those apps. And as ad experiences, it's not bad. You can drive comparable to Google click-through rates, above 3%. You can drive performance for very specific brands. Unfortunately, a lot of the AI supply outside of OpenAI is very student-focused or companionship-focused, which tends to be less than safe for work. And so what we found is that you can go out and build this SSP for AIs, but there's not that much supply. And really the biggest shift we've made in the last 2 years is learning that it's very easy to get publishers to sign up for a new revenue service. Now, you're closer to the money. Of course, they want to work with you. But at some level, this is advertiser tech, not publisher tech. And if you want to build something big, it has to work for advertisers first. And you need to follow that gravity. So I think there is a gap when you go out to fundraise between what gets hype. A lot of these like pay per scrape revenue sharing tools for splitting revenue between AI search platforms and traditional publishers, they're all nice ideas, but until there's significant revenue, there's not a real business there yet.
Yeah, I agree. It's very interesting to see what types of ideas and companies are getting funded by, so-called tier 1 West Coast VCs and what the potential disconnect is to us being in the market, really, really deeply. Like there's the GEO category, right? The GEO, generative engine optimization. I mean, it seems like every tier 1 fund has a bet in that category, and Sequoia is like plowing money into one very, very quickly. But on the other side of it, it's an idea that if it's got the parallel to search that we think it does, or an idea that didn't produce an outcome in a previous era, so it's pretty fascinating to see some of that disconnect. And then to your point, these ideas of a, marketplace around fractional payments based on queries and so on and so forth in practice, that's like super, super hard to make work. So I hear you.
Yeah, there's a very exciting idea that the geo companies are sort of tiptoeing around, but I don't think the market is ready for yet. And that's this idea of how do you monetize non-human but valid attention? And I think there's some things that you can do to influence all these bots beyond just traditional SEO. Cloudflare has their AI labyrinth that captures these bots that waste their time, but I think there is potential to start steering them and deriving some value there. I'd say the other category where there is an intersection between hype and reality in AI and ad tech is gaming. Ads in games, monetizing some of these companion apps. The ads might be sketchy, but there is a lot of attention going into there.
Is that what, again, we're recording this on November 14th yesterday, Jim Payne, the former founder of MolePub, and I forget the other company, like two monster successes. Is that what he's doing? He's focused on these kind of next gen AI mobile apps?
It's interesting. So I was asking someone close to that, what are they doing that AppLovin's not? And they couldn't comment yet. But I think there is a very interesting feature there. Obviously, MoPub got acquired by AppLovin, which has been runaway success. Like, I don't know how many hundreds of billions their market cap is now. But OpenAI is going to be an absolutely phenomenal ad product. And I think that's going to take a lot of revenue potentially from Meta and from Google. And then there's AI to increase yield and performance on existing media, on traditional open web. And that's really what we're working on.
You know what's fascinating, Steven? You haven't said CTV once. Is that something that you're just not even thinking about because the web opportunity is just so kind of real and close and, able to be kind of like a playground of experimentation for you?
A playground or a minefield? I'd say there are trade-offs when you choose which game you want to play in ad tech. So on CTV, you have very, very high ad quality, as long as it's actually being delivered. Now, there's some work to be done around there. Versus in programmatic display, it's very affordable. It's really, really complicated. If you want to drive performance on display, you have to be really good at ad tech and you have to be really good at AI. And that is a lot to do. And I like that because that plays to my team's strengths. And it also keeps away all these, if you're a 20-year-old dropout from Stanford, you are not going to have a good time in open web. There's just so many things that you have to get right there. So I think CTV is exciting. Obviously, the creative formats that you can do with the video models, with Veo, with Sora, are really, really cool. And, I enjoy posting Sora memes on LinkedIn all the time. But I think there's less comparative advantage for us. I think a lot of people are in that space. Of course, AI creative is going to solve the problem of insufficient creative in CTV. A lot of that seems obvious, and I think there's going to be a lot of competition there.
As I understand, I think another huge opportunity for AI and CTV will just be creative optimization, like understanding what elements of the ads are working well and optimizing them, and also having quicker feedback loops. And obviously that's part of that broader performance TV phenomenon that, Jason Fairchild and others are working on. I think, Steven, a good note to end on is one of optimism, and that the reason I love that slide in your pitch deck where it's performance on Meta versus performance on the open internet, and it being the open internet being 5% as effective at driving a click as Meta is, there's so much room for improvement, right? And the fuzzy thinking of which AI is capable, its ability to understand context and the way a human would perceive a situation and tailor a message to that context and that perception. It is very hard to bet against the ability of that breakthrough in computational understanding to drive some sort of breakthrough in advertising efficacy that will bridge the gap between Meta and the open internet. Again, maybe not even closing the gap, but at least closing some of it. And because the gap is so broad, that would come with a massive increase in efficacy for open internet advertising, which would obviously be much to the benefit of publishers who desperately need the innovation and advertisers who need alternative places to put their dollars and don't want to depend on only 2 or 3 platforms.
Yeah, that's what keeps me really excited about the space. We've been working on this for about 2 years now, and it's this potential and this need where open web publishers see traffic dropping 50%. But you also have this potential where AI can improve the yield and concentrate the spend, I think, multiples, not a 10% improvement, but a 2x or 3x or even more. And that's something where you combine that with everything AI can do with targeting, supply quality, all these radical creative formats we can do, like in terms of high impact ad formats, like Claude can code up anything you can imagine at scale. And the possibilities here, the outcomes you can drive on the open web with AI, we're just getting started.
That's a great point vis-a-vis all of the hand wringing, which is real, around the traffic drops for publishers due to consumer habits shifting. And it's like, oh my God, it was 10% and then 20%, maybe 30%. But what people don't talk about, which is what you just said, Steven, hey, okay, fine. Like traffic has dropped, but what if we were able to massively improve what is happening on the 60, 70, 80% that remains? You're going to be thrilled, which I think is a really good point that nobody is bringing up. And it was well articulated. And again, a lot of this stuff I think is so interesting and bodes really well for businesses like yours, man.
Definitely.
Positive note to end on. By the way, it's true in CTV too, right? Like CTV inventory, like is getting more expensive for rights owners. Like sports is the prime example of that. And like, what is the answer to sports rights just growing astronomically in cost? You have to make the inventory more effective. You have to make more of each view, right? And that's where that's where ad tech has a critical role to play in creating a more sustainable media environment. So yeah, we're all bullish on that. Steven, thank you very much for joining the pod.
Been a pleasure.
We'll see you next week, everybody. Bye-bye.